Everybody, welcome back to Equal Time Soccer. I'm Mark Privratsky, live from the Black Box Theater. That is the lounge of the Blackheart bar. Just decided to go chic and focus on the content. No background, Dani. But I'm here with my co-host, Dani Foxhoven Young. Dani, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy Wednesday. It's sunny. Yeah, excited to be here.
Another home game for Aurora
Heck
today.
Yeah.
They're coming off a 3-1 loss. I'm joking, Dani. Just I'm the motivator. It worked. Yeah. They won 3-1. But it was a scrappier game against a team that if they would have won, if Chicago City would have won, they would have been in first place in the Heartland. So not the prettiest game, but like Coach Lukic said afterwards in her interview with Equal Time, there's some value to finding, ways to finish out games, and they still got a 3-1 win.
Yeah, you know what? I actually felt like there was moments in that game where they were connecting really seamlessly. I actually thought there was some moments where it was like really pretty soccer. Having said that, I think the like choppiness of the game came because the field is so small. Like it's a tiny field. It was pretty windy. But when you play in a small field like that, it makes it really hard to find some rhythm, and it makes it really easy for the other team to just like disrupt passes and things. But having said that, I do think that there was moments where they were like really connecting. You could see what they were trying to do. They were overloading in certain parts of the field. I think that was easier to do because it was a smaller field, but I think, that sort of creativity started to really like show through. And then, they got the win. So that was exciting.
It was, Coach Lukic said, I'm guessing maybe they measured it, but she said in her post game with Matt as well, it was 96 yards by 67. So, there's varying fields in this division, but of course, like when you're playing on an ideal surface, it'd be more like 120 by 75.
Yep.
Something like that, maybe, So, and I think TCO it maybe isn't a full 120, but they get into the end zone. So it's certainly, maybe more like
plus 100,
110. Yeah. And plenty of space on the wings, thanks to the football sideline space. The space also maybe played into the new formation. It was funny to hear Coach Lukic was just calling it a 3-6-1, like at the tail of our pregame stream. She popped in when we weren't live. And she was like, we got a new formation, and it a 3-6-1. I could see it being described as like a 3-2-4-1. There's like 3 center backs, 2 holding, but kind of a way to utilize the space, I guess, in a field like that of really taking control.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a smaller field lends to some comfortability in like having 3 in the back and 3 like more designated center backs, because you can feel like you can cover a little bit more ground side to side. I think on a bigger field, I'll be really curious to see how that works out, because it's going to be like the requirement of either a holding mid to be back as a 4th, center back, or like cover or an outside mid doing a ton of work on the flanks to get back and be again like that 4th man back. So I will be very curious to see how that works out. Having said that, clearly she felt like it did what they wanted to see. The lineup's very similar. So, I think, she clearly liked it.
Finding a way to get her best 11. And this is it. It's cool to see a coach willing to try things, because, they win and they could keep it pretty straightforward as a group. They wouldn't need to try, but it's nice to see, because they're going to have to find different ways to break people down with different types of opponents, with more varied tactics than we just play the 5 teams in the upper Midwest. It'll be different in the playoffs. First goal was really funny. I don't know if you saw it, Dani. It was sent in by Kelsey Kalfusi. Good ball in, one of our many defenders who can serve it in. And then I had no idea what happened from the stream. 0. But Ken's Langdock found her way onto the ball, kind of a veteran goal. Ken's
it's kind of hard to tell.
Crafty tap-ins. Yeah.
It was kind of hard to tell, but it was a good ball in. And I think the thing to take away from it was that they scored on a set piece, which to me was like, that has been like in the last game against the last home game against why am I forgetting?
Dutch Lions.
Yes, Dutch Lions. Thank you. I think in the first half alone they had like 13 corner kicks.
I know.
Like it was absurd. And they didn't score, I think, until like late in the second half on a set piece. So I know that that's been something that Coach Lukic has mentioned she wants to see more from the team. So to be able to score on, first goal that way, I'm guessing she was really proud of.
Second goal was really fun. I just thought was really a very prototypical Aurora goal in that Mariah Wynn gets an interception just past half, quickly plays to Maya Hansen. Hansen has what I think I need to reclip just this part, but like she takes a turn, switches feet and turns and lays it off to Mariah, who follows through perfectly, just bangs it in. Kind of that's I think the typical goal is one where like the goalie doesn't have a chance for Aurora. They got it into the box and they've made the place where it's a simple finish, and that was sweet. Yeah, sweet combination.
Well, it was. What made it really unique was Mariah typically, as a flank player, especially on the left, she typically is going to like overlap to the outside, right? Like she's comfortable going overlapping to the outside. What was really unique about this was she actually underlapped Maya. So she basically won the ball, played it forward to Maya, who popped off the defense, kind of was in between like defense, midfield there. Did a little, footwork there as Maya was underlapping. So she was running to the inside of the field and then got it back on the other side. So it made it really, really unique because basically it pulled all of Chicago City's defenders like inside, and then like they all got super tight together, and then Maya basically slid Mariah in behind. It was a really, really cool goal to see for sure. To me, that's those are the moments where I was like, that is some of the best soccer that I think I've seen them play, where it was like that moment, they had done everything right. It ended in a goal. Like those moments were really shining moments.
Yeah. Maybe 4 touches. Mariah touches it. She passes. Maya touches, moves, pass, goal. It was 3 seconds. So that was really fun. And people, there was a watch party at the Black Heart, and it was cool. This is the first time we really had a whole crew. There was probably 40 people here, Dani. So
nice.
After that, I was too busy trying to get the highlight up, so I didn't get a video. Like they were doing the chants after. It was a whole thing. So gives me high hopes for a solid playoff like watch parties should we have away games. The third goal too, just wanted to say, it was also Mariah Wynn driving forward. She drives forward to the 18 again, kind of more internally. She was clearly finding wrinkles in her game, like you said, kind of different ways to attack. She lays it off to Cat Rapp, who by the way gets rocked. I think if we had VAR, he would have got a card from the opponent. She gets swept out, but she plays the ball across. Again, Adler taps in, and it's 3. So they found their way in the first half, and just then I guess really held on.
Yeah. Well, I think the second half, it's looked to me like the wind really picked up, and it kind of just became like a game of grit. But I was listening to the announcers at the end of halftime, and they were like, I don't really know where an answer is going to come for Chicago City. Like they just can't keep, again, like they can't stop the relentlessness of Minnesota Aurora. And I genuinely felt like that was a pretty good assessment of how the game went in general. I don't think the second half got better. I don't think it got worse. I just think the conditions made it a little bit more challenging. And at the end of the day, they hung on for a win. Yeah,
you could hear it in the post-game interviews that you could look at. You can just hear the wind, how strong it is coming through. And I did want to give a shout after this game. Some players are working their way up. Aurora started disseminating all-time points leaders, which is great. You got to start the history. History starts in year 2. Once you have your end. So Maya Hansen, no surprises, up top with 24 points. Cat Rapp has 20. Mariah Wynn, 18. Morgan Turner can do nothing this year. Bid boost. We don't know what next summer looks like. She has 16 and Langdock has 16. What I think is cool is Langdock has 16 points. Wykers and Stone both have 13 and 12 as, really more holders. And then Adler is already 5th or 6th with 13 points from 6 games. So
it's crazy. It's crazy. I feel like with so many players that have made such a big impact, and you've had multiple players with multiple goals, which is crazy. And that obviously lends to point getters. So it's gonna be it's cool to see how many different players are like have their hat in the ring.
Yeah, and by the way, after this, we're gonna bring the big dog in. He's getting destroyed on his prediction for goal and offensive production in a positive way. I'm sure he enjoys it. But for example, Cat Rapp has 5 assists in 6 games. Wykers has 4 goals, and then Hansen and Adler are scoring 4 assists for Wykers, 6 goals each for Maya and Adler. So again, a balanced attack from Aurora, really scary to defend. And I will say the last thing before we do a break. power rankings, Dani. The USLW
Yes,
time.
I know. I've been, yeah.
I think First Take is probably talking about these, you know, or at least just women's sports. Maybe that's banter for them. But Aurora's number 2, right behind the Glens. And guess what? I'm guessing that's bulletin material for all the. It's simple and it's kind of, you know, it doesn't mean anything, but yeah.
No, I mean, I think that it's recognized. That's the important thing, is that it's recognized. Like, there is standout teams in each division, and they're recognizing that. And for it to be a Midwest team is really cool to see. That's, you know, that's special.
Yep, starting to pay attention to those other teams that could be potential playoff opponents. Let me read an ad. This show is brought to you by Pentz Homes. Whether you're buying or selling, or if you're looking to do some projects in your current home, Nate and Lydia can help you find what you need. Need financing for a basement remodel, looking at a second bath, or even a workspace now that you're working from home? Pentz Homes and their preferred lender, Angie Shearer with Luminant Financing, can help find the right financing tool for you. Go to pentzhomes.com or learn more on social media at Pentz Homes. All right, Dani, let's bring in the big dog.
Big dog.
Maya Hansen's destroying him and his credibility within the game. But Matt, I want to ask you something. This is a player you're aware of from following the pro game a bit more, and it's just a random and cool thing. Talking about the pro experience we have on our team, you interviewed Vienna Benke after the last game. They show birth dates on the USLW. That for some reason that's what they list. They don't say like age or something, but they show the birth year. And hers is 1993. She's a peer of ours, Dani. Normally it's the parents, but just talk about how cool it is. And by the way, in Googling Vienna, just to like talk to you about her, she sang the national anthem at a college soccer game 12 years ago, my friend.
Wow.
Freshman.
Got a voice, huh?
It sounded good. Good job, Vienna. Yeah. But Matt, what do you think about a player like that who's choosing to keep the dream alive? She's played in Iceland a bunch. I mean, obviously she's hoping to use this to maybe even get one last bigger step, I guess.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I continue to be surprised that more players of sort of that standard didn't sort of desperately go to Nicole and say, hey, let me go there, get some attention,
maybe
get some time, get some good tape. Well, I do think it's worth noting, like, this year, players like Kennedy Faulkner, like if I was Vienna Benke's agent, this is literally exactly where I would want her to be in the summer, because the training environment is high leverage. She's from the Midwest, you know, she's from Wisconsin. So her parents were at the game in Chicago. I met them. They were really nice. But it's also just, you get to play in a different environment that's nothing like the pro league in Iceland, because you're, you know, the age we mentioned when I interviewed her, I said, the age splits are actually kind of similar, because teams in those European leagues actually do sort of range from like
they do
16 to 35. And so actually that part is kind of similar. And we asked her about that, you know, in post game, but I think she's the exact type of player, or Sophie French or whoever, you know, Kennedy Faulkner, Tiana Harris, who has pro aspirations, where Vienna actually has those pro chops. And so does Hannah Adler. You know, she's played in Denmark, she's played in the NWSL, but I think it shows a lot that she is not just coming in as a pro, getting guaranteed, you know, 70-minute games, 90-minute games. It shows a lot about how much Coach Lukic and the Aurora staff trust their returning players who are maybe a little bit younger, and how much your play actually earns you those minutes. You see players like Kat Rapp, who her role has exploded this year. And then you see other players like Eli Rapp, was a regular starter by the end of last year, and now is more of a spot rotation player, just because the competition is higher. And there's just so much fairness, I think, in the way you see players getting rotation minutes. And it means a player like Vienna Benke, you know, isn't guaranteed to play every game, even though she's a pro player. But I think you have to know that the value she brings in training is just immense. Having players like that who are mature, have the right mindset, and just sort of know how to play the game. I mean, that's the reason why so many of these young players improve throughout the summer, is because you have a player like a Benke in there who's literally played, you know, hundreds of professional games, on top of, you know, being a standout for UW Milwaukee. Go Panthers, obviously.
Well, I think the other interesting thing to that, because I think you are exactly right, but I do think Coach Lukic, she has said it time and time again, is that like they are making this commitment to playing, or trying to play like as many of these players, and like letting players really show every week in training, like, I deserve this, or I'm going to make a change, or I'm going to try to make a spot on the 18 this week, or the 11 or whatever. And she has really stuck to that. But I also do think that she has a really good vision of, like, this is a very condensed season, which means that we have a short amount of time to try players out, to try things out. But we also have to be really cautious of the amount of load that like condensed season brings, because there's not a ton of recovery time. It's like bang, 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 you have to turn around and play this many games. And so I do think she's also doing that because she's like, we need to save this player, or we need to save this like combination of players for this game, in 2 weeks, kind of a thought process. So I think, I do think that's I think that's something that should be considered when we're looking at like who's playing and when and why.
Yeah. Facing Green Bay today. Green Bay, by the way, the feather in their cap is they are still the only team to cost Aurora a loss of points in the regular season through 18 or so games, whatever it is. They've had a scrappier start, but they never are out of games. They won away at Bavarian 2-1. They won at Rochester. They had a close loss at home to RKC, which is a surprise to us because it followed the 10-0 loss by RKC to Aurora. They lost 1-0, 2-1 at home to Chicago City, and then they got another home win over Rochester. But, a team that has plenty of returners, they have, plenty of people who Aurora players have played against in the past. Matt, what do you expect to see out of Green Bay as an opponent today at TCO?
I think more than anything, what stuck out to me, sort of doing a quick scan of like how they've been this year, is just that they are a quick start team. 6 of their 9 goals have come not just in the first half, but in the first 30 minutes. And so I think that number sticks out to me because that actually speaks a lot. It's very similar to the college game, where games are almost always sort of a team that might be underrated or rated on paper worse than an opponent can always show pretty well for the first 20 or 30 minutes, because that's when everyone is fresh and your best players are always on the field. And so Green Bay, to me, is a team that is always pretty well coached. They're pretty well prepared, and they know how to start a match. And that's why you've seen those goals come in the early parts of the game, I think, because they do have some pretty solid, impact players at the top. I think they might be thinner overall than a team like Aurora. And so their pressure is going to come early because they're going to be organized, they're going to be prepared. And you better believe they are going to come in remembering that they were the only team to take points at TCO last season. And so they are going to come in, they're going to be playing at their very, very top. And so I think you're going to need to see Aurora really locked in early on, because as Danny said in the earlier segment, that Chicago City field, I think you maybe even downplayed it. It was absurdly small. And Coach Lukic was very even-handed. She didn't really speak to it. But I can tell you, like, coaching staffs, when you play on fields like that, are pissed off. They are really mad because it's an entirely different sport.
For sure.
It's entirely different. And so I think Aurora will come in with a lot more comfort on their home field, but it'll be another adjustment, because I think even if they stick with the same formation they had in Chicago, I think you're going to see an adjustment to being able to play it at a full field versus that small compact field. And so you might see, there was that goal, I screen grabbed the moment when Chicago City scored their goal. It was basically just a defensive mistake by like 4 players at once. Like 2 City players were in the box and being covered by nobody. Mm-hmm. And it was just sort of like just a mistake. Like it was just a straight up mistake by 4 players at the same time. And I think that's the type of thing you see when you're trying a new formation or you have new players in different spots. And so I'm sure that'll get coached out. Like the coaches for sure saw that goal was only because of a defensive misstep, but Green Bay is going to pressure them early. They're at least going to be really fired up. But Aurora has scored early too. So I think it'll be a good match. I think as long as Aurora can live through those first 15 to 30 minutes, I think it should be a comfortable game for Aurora, but they can't have any of those missteps, and there will be a little bit of adjustment, I think.
Yeah, I think those are all really, really good points. The first thing I was thinking, just 2 things during all of that. number one, Green Bay is one of the only teams that has played, like that we've played at home, or Minnesota Aurora has played at home this season, that also played here last year. Like, obviously Dutch Lions, but Bavarian had never, that was their first time here. Obviously, Rochester, that was their first time here. You know, RKC, that was their first time here. So Green Bay is really one of the few comfortable teams that has been like in this kind of a sold out atmosphere under the lights before, which is what tonight is shaping up to look like. So, you know, and they got, like you said, they took away points from Aurora last year in that environment. So I think that they will know exactly how that feels, and they'll be like going off of that same kind of energy and rivalry and, you know, all of that comes along with it.
And also, they got the draw last year, but the season ended with a 5-1 loss to Aurora. So plenty of motivation as well of like, they don't think they're 4 goals worse than Aurora.
I will also note, I think Aurora is going to come in really, really fired up for this game, because the other element of that Chicago City game that I saw, particularly on the ground, is you mentioned Cat Rapp getting blown up. There was multiple times where Chicago City players were going sort of like the pissed off little sibling vibe of they were just chopping Aurora players all game long. There's a clip where I could tweet it out later where Hannah Adler just gets like shoved over in the box, but there's no PK call. You know, there was so many times where I was worried that Cat Rapp in particular was going to get hurt. I mean, she was getting hammered and they took her off at half for that reason. She kept getting chopped. They were going after her, like literally going for her knees. And so I think Aurora is going to know they have an opportunity to play against a team that, like, Green Bay is not, they are not bullshitters. They are not shithousers. They play straight up. And so Aurora is going to have a chance to play just actually wide open soccer if they get out on the run. And so I think you're going to see some players really psyched to just like put up some goals, honestly. Yeah. Because they were getting chopped the whole game.
Well, that was going to be my second thought to what you were saying before, where you were saying like you downplayed the size of it. Like a small field does make it really, it level play, it like sort of level sets teams, because fitness doesn't play as much of an impact when you're on a smaller field. Physicality plays more of an impact when you're on a smaller field, because you're in a tighter area where you can get into tackles easier, quicker. You know, you just have somebody around you all the time, so that just lends to a more physical game. So I do think that was a factor in Dutch Lions, and I think going back to a bigger field, it's going to be, I think there's two sides to it, right? Where like it opens up the play a little bit more. You have more space. You're not going to get that same physicality. Your fitness becomes a little bit more exposed because you have to cover more ground. Having said that, I do think with the 3-6-1 formation, that will lend to more areas in the field where they can be exposed, right? Where like there's not as much coverage, where if a player gets beat, it's a little bit of a further distance for somebody to cover. So I do think that it lends to the hands of Minnesota Aurora to play on a bigger field. But I also think I'll be very curious to see how that 3-6-1 translates.
Yeah. Keep your eyes on how, both, Mariah Wynn and Kenzie Lang got tracked back. And then, how you said, like, Dani, the holders, cover that space. It was a rugby stadium for Pete. We didn't mention it specifically. And kind of a bizarre choice is the commentators were choosing to refer to the rugby line. So they kept saying the 22-yard line, the 40-yard line. And I was like, this is confusing as shit. And they also, I will say, the commentators were making jokes. They were making jokes. The people in the bar were like, they need to just make a Will Ferrell joke. Like it was wide open mic. Dani, it's the curse of having the open mic. It's us. It takes time to rein it in. It was fun though. And it was good that they had a stream, you could use, and people were cheering when it was rainy there. And so a couple times it would get pretty smudged, and and then you'd see a rag come out and clean it, and everyone's like, oh! I should have taken a reaction to that. But after this big week for Aurora, first home game on the weekend, let it not be ignored that all of these home games, they haven't sold out yet, but they've all been Wednesdays, and they've been getting 4,000 plus. That's wild. During school
still. Yeah, I have to say that.
So that's Wednesday should be big, and then Saturday guess for sure is a sellout, and that'll be very fun before they go on a couple of away games. They're going to get a little team bonding time, like you said. And Green Bay's season ends with a home game at Aurora, but Aurora ends with a sweet July 1st game, which would be kind of tough. It's a 48-hour turnaround from Green Bay, but hopefully they're in a position to rotate. Yeah, Dani, we wish you luck in picking out yet another post-game fit.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Two super quick things. I think you said Kafusi sent in that free kick, but we can't. It was Abby Ostrom, so we have to give her props. She sent in that free kick assist.
Oh, I just watched it. No, I think Ken said it was Abby, but anyway, I watched it just this morning, so I don't know. Well,
yeah. I was standing right behind her. I know Ostrom sent it in. I'm sure maybe Kelsey got a touch or something too, but Ostrom sent in that service, and then
shout out to Ostrom. Yes.
And then I literally fact check it, and then I know I keep posting about the playoff picture for folks following the playoff picture stuff. You know, the Indy 11 is in pole position to claim, you know, the Valley division, and, you know, could very well be a playoff opponent for Aurora. But out west, we mentioned the Glens, but the Northern California division has 2.5 playoff spots. So actually all 3 of those really, really tough California teams could make the playoffs. But the thing is, them and the Northwest division will eat each other up. Only one team will make it into the semifinals. So those 3 California teams might all make the playoffs, but then essentially cannibalize themselves by the time it's the semifinal. So worth noting that we are part of the West. So whoever comes out of Minnesota's sort of first round cluster and the California cluster will play each other in the semis. So it's worth tracking those Western teams, because should Aurora make it to the semifinals, that's who we would match up with. So Oakland Soul, California Storm, and the Glens, who are all just, you know, as Mark would say, they are the blue bloods of the W League for sure.
Bring it.
Well,
Bring it,
and I will say, while we're talking about playoff picture, I do think that this is something that Nicole is already thinking about, is because, I mean, obviously, but like really thinking about it heavily, because it's going to be like last year, as you guys know, it was the same through our division, where it was like, you know, there was not that many challenging games, and then all of a sudden the jump to playoff performance was incredibly different. And I think we're starting to see something like that shaping up, which I think 2 things Nicole has said, you know, this has lent, like, every team in this division has given their best to Minnesota Aurora, because they're trying to eke out any points that they can. And I think that will continue to happen. So I think Minnesota Aurora is having to like hone in on what they're doing and like get better every game. But I still think they have a challenge to postseason that is, you know, something they haven't seen yet. Big. So it's big.
But it's looking back at last year's results. I was speaking this morning. Good to remember that even among, you know, when they were kind of getting on a roll last year, regular season, they made it through on really close games. 2-1 win, 1-0 win when it got tough games. So that kind of, in terms of my perspective, reminded me they made that transition last year. And so I hope they're on a good, but should be a very fun game. We will not make it easy today. I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone go get an autograph from Dani at Autograph Alley when the game is done. Thanks, you guys.